this year, we are also very intentional about our growth. Like we've been saying on this episode, we do great work, great products, but unfortunately, it's not translating in the numbers of the people who are watching this. So the plan is to really be more intentional in growing our audience base, growing our subscriber base, and figuring out how we can do that and being more technical because we've got
health. And I think this was the most covered last year because so many things were emerging. Yes. And I could remember from the first one we did was on neglected tropical diseases. And what I remember about this podcast was Michael Ofire, he's from Amref, and he said that, oh, this is actually a disease that is driven by poverty.
So it's the dream women in STEM. So as well, again, with the high school learners. I think for me, it was very inspiring, and I think I wish I would have had something like that in high school. But even though it wasn't available to us, to see like these organizations willing to do that for high school learners, empowering girls in STEM.
The Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne Withany. This is a very special episode. It's our first episode in 2026. Can you believe it? I am so excited. And I am here, not on my own this time. As you can see, I'm joined by my two amazing colleagues. We've got Treezer, who is our show producer, and we've got Kasuba, who is our audio visual editor. Treezer and Kasuba, welcome.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you.
It's so awesome that people will get to see the people who help bring this vision forward, that it's not just me who's on screen. So welcome to the other side, guys. Get comfortable.
Not very comfortable, but okay.
Get very comfortable. Don't worry. You are in very good hands. So we are obviously now starting with our first episode for this year. But I think before we move forward, it's always good to take a look back. So let's just have a moment. Let's talk about some of the episodes that we did last year and touch on some of the themes that we actually spoke about. Kasuba, you can go ahead and tell us the themes there.
Okay, so under science and education, science communication and education, we had 5 African science communicators collaborate on the Africa Day episode. So it was different scientists and talking about how they are utilizing digital platforms for science communication, which was great to see like, okay, we're not the only ones doing this. Something we know, but just having those others and hearing what they do and they in different parts of Africa. So that was encouraging. We also had the platform growth story by you, Anne, yours truly. So we had that, and then you shared the vision for last year and where we've come from and where we've been. Then we also had the Dream Women in STEM, which was just high scholars, high school learners, who are aspiring to be in science, especially engineering. So we had that episode. Then we also had a collaborative episode with Mazungumzo, TCC Africa, so with Joy Owango, which was also great. Like, they're basically also science communicators and looking into science research, and they're based in Kenya. So all those things were really great. I think that's it for science and education.
Awesome. Treezer?
So we had the theme of global health, and I think this was the most covered last year. Because so many things were emerging. Yes, and I could remember from the first one we did was on neglected tropical diseases. And what I remember about this podcast was Michael Ofire, he's from Amref, and he said that, oh, this is actually a disease that is driven by poverty. and it is a people disease. It is for the poor. And I really felt the pinch. I was like, this is so accurate. Because when we hear about neglected tropical diseases, we're like, what are these? But then he said it so well. And we also had an episode with Carl Daniel on digital health. And I remember comparing, we were talking about the ratio, one doctor to 5,000 people, which is very far. And also the amount of distance that people walk to get to hospitals. Yes, and all those disparities and how digital health can actually help do this and to bridge the gap. And we also had an episode on biostatistics and how it's important in health. And we had one very sad episode, another sad one, about how funding cuts are affecting HIV and TB treatment, especially in South Africa, which has the highest burden for both diseases. And I remember Tabitha and Twilly saying, oh, people with HIV say we refuse to die. And that one was so emotional, but it also showed our strength as Africans and our resilience. And also we covered non-communicable diseases, hypertension, and this one was covered by our contributor, one of our contributors for the newsletter, and that was Nontobeko. And we also had Ruth came in and also covered something on non-communicable diseases. So that means we were all round. We covered infectious diseases, we covered non-communicable diseases, we covered neglected tropical diseases, and also technology, which is digital health. So we were all round guys. And I was going to forget that we had the clinical trial for the M27 clinical trial for TB. So we actually covered research. That was Lee Faili. So we actually covered also the research. So health was well covered, and we are looking towards more of that this year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even as you speak with some of the episodes, it really takes me back to some of those emotions that we felt. But we'll come back to that. So for some of the other episodes that we also covered last year was, of course, in the area of agriculture and food security. This is an area which was pretty near and dear to me and personal because this is part of the area that I studied in agriculture. We had a very interesting episode with Albert on beekeeping and like the sustainability aspect of it. And he talked us through why bees are so important in the agriculture space. But the really interesting thing with this episode was that Albert is a guy from in the tech space. So he really brought in that technology aspect in bee farming. And we learned so much. He taught us how people can have bees even in like a city setup, but of course there are some rules and things that need to go through. Another really interesting episode that I really enjoyed was the one with Bongi where we spoke about invasive plants and turning them into renewable energy. I remember when she first told me, we had a discussion with Wongi, where before we got onto the show, she was telling me about her master's research. And I was like, this is so cool. And I think it just really such an innovative way, especially as energy is such a huge demand, to hear about some of these really amazing things of using renewable energy, and what more so with invasive plants when they're such a big pest in the agriculture and the environment space. Another special episode was also with on moringa farming with Maboang. So this one was also quite cool because I met her through another workshop, and she is so passionate. Her passion for farming and moringa farming is so infectious, and she's really doing amazing things from really just like the beginning of how you actually farm the moringa and the farm that she has, I think in the Northwest in South Africa. I stand to be corrected, to the post harvest production. So the packaging and how she sells these products, and how she's got a diversification of these moringa products. And moringa is such a superfood, and it's so important for food security as well. Then we had another episode of hydroponics using waste materials such as urine, for example, in a hydroponic system. So this is a system where you're able to grow plants in a sort of a soilless medium. This was with Valentine. This was also very innovative, very exciting, and another way to help food and agriculture and food security as well. Then we had agricultural policy. This was an interesting one. It was in the very beginning of the year where we talked more about some of these policies that actually happen to implement all this work done in agriculture and the food security. And even another one that also followed on was also another one called where we did strengthening food policy with Prof. Zama from the University of Stellenbosch and the food lab that we had. So overall, it was also, I know Treezer said that global health we touched a lot there, but we also touched quite a lot also in the agriculture space. So I know we already started, ladies, with talking about some of the episodes, and Treezer actually started us off with triggering some of those emotions of some of the episodes that we did. So now I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, Treezer. Which one was your favorite?
Oh my God, that's so hard because I loved most of our episodes. I love the stories, but then I'll go back to the HIV one, the funding cards for HIV and TB. It was my favorite because I felt the emotions just rise when I was listening to that episode, and it's because it builds from an episode that we did in 2024 again with Tabitha and Tuli on HIV. And I remember also getting very emotional because she's one person who is very passionate about what she does. And she was telling that story about they've worked so hard. It's in the 1997s, and we still do not have preventives for HIV, and we do not have a lot of therapies for it. And then they struggle so hard to prevent a mother-to-child transmission during birth. And then 18 years later, this child that was saved during birth from HIV, she's born, or he is born negative. 18 years later, because of not enough information or because of negligence or something else, this child contracts HIV. Now an adult contracts HIV. And now for her, it's a very sad situation. And she uses that to explain the young black girl that gets HIV after she was protected from it 18 years ago. And now she gets it again. And now we have more therapies. You can prevent it using PrEP or PEP, or now we have an injection that can last you for 6 months and you still get it. So that was a sad one. So when we were talking about the funding cuts, this is one thing that caught Africa off guard.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did. And it affected us in the worst, most painful spots, because HIV we've made a lot of strides, and then now we cannot access treatment. And I remember Dr. Limfo saying that I was taking care of people, of youth, and now they're calling me. They're like, what do we do? How do we access treatment? And that was very sad. And it showed the clear picture of what was affected, the true voices of the people on the ground, and how even some people lost their jobs. But again, I like the resilience where she said, no, we are not going to die. It's happening, but we are resilient enough. So I love that episode.
Treezer, like you already said, I knew you were going to pick this one actually, because it was also one of my favorites. But I was like, it's fine. I know she might pick it. But you're absolutely right. That episode was so timely because we were in the thick of it when we produced this episode. There was so much uncertainty. People didn't know what was happening. And I think even within ourselves, one of us probably knew someone who was affected by these funding cuts. So the fact that we were able to have so many people, from the doctors to the NGOs to the person who's working on the ground. I think for me, it was the nurse, George, who also really touched me because he spoke on the idea that he was working in a space where they were him and his colleagues were helping people obviously in the space, and when the funding cuts, he had to relocate to a whole different part of the country in order for him to, you know, still look after his family. And it's literally giving me goosebumps right now, but like there was a part where he was saying that, you know, there were even people, his colleagues, who are now jobless. They're looking for jobs, but people are not hiring because at that point, no one was like certain. So, as much as we spoke on the patient side, like Tabitha did, and that was really, really powerful, it was also really moving for me as well to hear on the healthcare worker side, because there were two sides to the story, and so many people were severely affected by this. It was such a, ooh, I don't know, that time was really, really a difficult time for all of us to navigate. Yeah. So thank you for bringing up that episode. And also, we have to note that this episode on TikTok did so well, especially the part where, you know, Tabitha spoke on that. I don't know, Kasuba, since you are a social media person, you can just touch on the TikTok performance maybe of that particular episode.
This episode did so well on TikTok, but also on our YouTube. I think that has been like one of our highest views on TikTok and YouTube as well. So I think the moment we released it, already it had like on YouTube, firstly, the full episode, already it had passed all our views combined,
Yes.
I think, you know, for all our episodes. So it was like very moving. And then the part where Tabitha talks about the HIV positive people are resilient and they refuse to die and all that. Also, that was one of our highest, that clip by itself. But each and every part, funding cuts, everything that was touched on, it just, yeah, we had the highest numbers with that episode.
Yeah, so it really, and I think it just goes to show these are the types of stories that really move people and affect people. And maybe even as we're thinking ahead in our own planning as a team, we have to now think like that. Like, what are the current trending topics and who can we get so we can speak on some of these very important science and health issues that are affecting people on so many faces in Africa. So, Kasuba, Treezer started way high for us about her episode. What was your favorite episode?
Mine is more exciting. So it's the Dream Women in STEM. So as well, again, with the high school learners. I think for me it was very inspiring, you know, and I think I wish I would have had something like that in high school. But even though it wasn't available to us, to see like these organizations willing to do that for high school learners, empowering girls in STEM in this subjects and knowing what they'll do in STEM, you know, because I think for us it was just a thing of you can do medicine or you can do some science course, but you wouldn't get into the depth of it. And also because those high school learners are so innovative. I think one of them, they had to create a robot, a
Yes,
talking robot.
that
And
was
they are like grade 10, 11, 12. So
yeah,
that was, even when I was editing it, it was very touching. I'm like, oh my gosh. And they were so excited and they were so passionate. Even when you would ask them, like, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know? And they just had it like, okay, yeah, I want to go this direction. It was my first time being exposed to this, and I would like to explore more of this. So for me, that was very inspiring and touching, and also just exciting, you know. And most of them were really from disadvantaged
yes.
backgrounds. So to see like you have something has been provided for you, or you are inspired, you know. You can go into university knowing this is what I want to study, this is what I want to become. It doesn't stop where you are. Like,
Man, okay, you've just gone and taken my other episode, but it's fine. That was also, I loved that episode. And I think another thing that I loved about that was the girls' confidence. I was
Mm,
interviewing them and I was like, "Yo, these girls, they're 15, okay, well, maybe 16, 15, 16 there.
yeah.
And the confidence in which they spoke was just, it gets me excited about the future. It gets me excited about these girls who are so sure of themselves because as Black children, as Black people, by nature sometimes and culturally we are very meek, but to see them being so confident in where they want to go, what they want to do and how this singular experience really is such a defining moment. And it's these little moments that like are that little seed to the next thing. So shout out to the dream woman in STEM, to Takalani, TK, and the team there who are doing such amazing work. In fact, a little plug on that. This year, we did the episode where they were in Durban, but the same year they also went to Johannesburg, and this year they are going to another part of South Africa, Limpopo. So it's also really nice for innovations and organizations who are really very intentional about empowering young women, and not only in one space in South Africa, but different parts because so many girls need this. And I think also if you are an organization or if you know someone who's doing some amazing work like this outside of South Africa, would love to hear from you and would love to engage with them and also spotlight that because it's so, so important to, motivate the next generation. Treezer, do you want to add anything there?
I think I agree that it was a very interesting episode because, like Cass says, these girls, they got the chance to experience science at a very early age, something that most of us do not get. So that means that science education has really advanced, and we are going to get to a point where we are living our STEM dream in Africa, and we are heading there. So it was a very interesting program. It still is. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so it's my turn to talk about my favorite episode. I will say it's like picking a favorite child. We touched on some of the two already. I think I have two, but I'll speak on them as one, because the other one technically wasn't an episode. The first one was the one which it was all of the science communicators. We had that panel with the African science communicators, and as Cass touched on in the beginning, it was such a wonderful moment to have a platform to share with other people who are doing similar work and being exposed to this because the table is big enough for all of us. Science communication is such a huge thing that is needed, particularly in Africa. And comparing to when I started in 2020, there was very few of us in this space. So now to see that there are people coming up, especially in this podcasting space, it was wonderful. And it's really nice because these are my peers, people who I look at and who are doing such amazing things, whether they're specializing in immunology like wealth or care team, for example, or they are specializing in agriculture or whatever. It was really nice to sort of all come together and talk about that common mission. Another one was, it wasn't an episode, but it was the Instagram live that we did as an extension of the telemedicine episode. That was also with Zakiti Nkize, who is a science and health. Well, she's a science communicator, scientist as well, science writer. So it was really nice to collaborate again with somebody else who's doing such amazing work in their field. And we had a wonderful interactive Instagram live on telemedicine and the examples, using a South African example based off the Kenyan episode that we had. And it was, again, really nice because it was like a nice interactive session. So people got to come on Instagram Live, interact with us, prompt the episode as well. So it was really, really great to have that like live engagement with audiences. So yeah, those were two of my, so sort of the similar theme, just the whole aspect of collaboration. Awesome. So we've spoken about the past, we've spoken about the present, well, sort of, yeah, the past in terms of our what we did last year and our favorite episodes. So let's now start speaking about the future. It's 2026. In our different areas of the work that we do on this podcast, I think it'll be really cool to hear from each of you about what we can expect, the type of growth, something new, something exciting. Kasuba, would you tell us more about the work that you do on this team and what we can expect in 2026?
So, as you already said at the beginning, visual audio editor, also take care of the social media platforms every now and again and all that. So I think for me is I want to grow in storytelling with visuals and audios. Like how can I make them more appealing, you know? Like how do we use that? Like the stories, we've shared our favorite episodes and everything, but how do we put it out there for more to come across it and say, oh, this is interesting, you know? And the visuals also are like dynamic, they're great, you know? So it's like, let's tell a story through what we're doing, through audio, through visuals, through, yeah, social media, getting out there, learning more social media strategies, editing strategies, you know, positioning myself for that. I think that's where I want to grow in.
I'm excited. I mean, last year we had some pretty cool things. There were moments where even in our group, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Right.
So between the three of us, where you'd show us something and we'll have something new. Also, in that aspect, it would also be remiss of us to not acknowledge Elijah, who's also been helping us with our graphics. Elijah Black, thank you so much. He's also helped us with our graphics and our social media. So we are very intentional, and we thank you as well for your input where you're like, this color is not right. And we're like, oh my gosh.
Can you let it go with the color already? Like, oh no, this font is not right. Like,
This
just let
font is
it go.
not right. This needs to be centered. So it's that attention to detail that really just makes everything cleaner. And I'm excited to see what you bring in. And yeah, man, I'm excited because you already showed us a little snippet of what you want to do.
Yes,
So,
what I'm working on, right? So
so
exciting, a lot of
you
work, but
guys. Yeah, no, we trust you can do it. So
yeah.
you guys are really in for a treat. Treezer, on your end, what can we expect?
Our work is very connected. That's why we are a team. So while Cass is thinking about better ways to put this out there, because we do a lot of good stuff, we have agreed, but then we have to put it out there so that people get it in different ways and in interesting ways. Science can be boring. So I am thinking about what are the better things to discuss this year? Like we said, the HIV one was so good because it touched the heart of people and people love their stories. And so I'm thinking that this year we are going to focus more on research done in Africa and for Africans. And that is a part that we have not intentionally looked at. And for example, I'll give an example of developing medicines and vaccines. And most of the times, you realize that we participate in tests for vaccines and medicines that are not developed in Africa. So, developed out of Africa, and then we are taken through the clinical trials. And so this time, but we have a lot of them that are now coming up that are developed in Africa and are being tried in Africa. And those are very, very good wins because then that means we are moving towards health security. And some other things are vaccines. We are talking about, people are rejecting vaccines, and we do not know the African perspective of why, for example, we reject vaccines. And it could be, and this is one of the factors, that it is because of our religions. And maybe it is because of our traditional belief systems. And we say, no, it doesn't work. So, how do we amplify research that is done in Africa and for Africans and are very, very unique to us? And if someone says, this is how it should be done, you're like, yes, actually, this one happens to me. So that is what I think we should be intentional about, and many, many people's stories. So that's where we're heading this year.
I love it. I'm excited. I mean,
Wow.
we really do say that we amplify African stories. So now to be more intentional about it, and again to get those stories that are moving, that makes people like, this is something I can relate to. And I already heard Kasuba speaking about, like, really agreeing when you were like, yeah, could it be the religion, the cultural perspectives aspect of this? So I'm excited to see what we have happening. So on more of the visions of what you can expect. So last year also, I think we didn't get to mention that we launched the website, our landing page, our landing home, Root of Science Media. So it's that platform where everything that we do, you can find it there. And it's also a great opportunity for people who are wanting to work with us to also see some of the work that we've done with other organizations. So this year, we are also very intentional about our growth. Like we've been saying on this episode, we do great work, great products, but unfortunately, it's not translating in the numbers of the people who are watching this. So the plan is to really be more intentional in growing our audience base, growing our subscriber base, and figuring out how we can do that and being more technical, because we've got a wonderful, wonderful treasures of knowledge and so many people who are so generous with their time to come on and share the stories, and, the wonderful team that works really hard behind the scenes. So we really want to be more intentional, even as much as we are growing on TikTok, which is a wonderful surprise, but it needs to translate, for example, onto YouTube. So how do we get those merging things to happen? So another thing is also to find a way to work again with some partners. We had many wonderful partners and organizations who we worked with last year, and we are so grateful for that. We look forward to sort of renewing those relationships and working with them as well, but also engaging with other people to do collaborations as well. So this is also an opportunity that if you are looking for us to do some collaborations, we are very much open to that in terms of the vision, etc. And also, if you are a person who enjoys the work that we do at Root of the Science Media, and you believe maybe there's an area that you think you can contribute to, we also are very open to that, and we are open to hearing some of that suggestion, etc. So vision-wise, I'm excited for what Root of the Science Media is going to do this year. We have a great team, and it's going to be a big year, even bringing in some of our own personal experiences and some of the work that we do, and helping that translate into the crossover Root of the Science Media. This is not all our day jobs, not yet anyway, until one day. But it's wonderful that we get to sort of bring in all of that. So I'm excited, ladies. I'm so, so excited for 2026. It took us a little bit of a while to get here, but we are moving. And also just to take this moment to say thank you both for your hard work, your efforts, there's so much that happens behind the scenes that so many people do not get to see. And I'm so grateful for the both of you, for even pushing me sometimes when, it happens. So I'm really, really grateful. And even when I push you guys, you really step up and execute outside of the ball. So I really appreciate that. Also really appreciate taking a moment to say thank you to all of our partners who we partnered with last year, who really helped push the vision of what Root of the Science did. All of our collaborators as well, people who reached out to us and asked us to feature their organizations, etc. Thank you so much to everyone. But most importantly, to the people who listen, who come back, who share, who text us and say, hey, we watched an episode. Thank you so much. It is such a blessing to be able to do this job. To do this work, and everyone who works behind the scenes to make this work. Thank you so much. So that is it for the first episode of the Root of the Science podcast. It's your girl, Dr. Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.